Hello and welcome to FailRace versus the community. This is C-Class Racing at Road Atlanta, and on race 1 there was a crash fairly early on. That didn't take very long, like a second. Anyhow, I am driving the Alpha 155, mainly because of DTM body kit. There's a big muscle car there. Something pink gets flung across the road. I don't even know what car that was. It vanished out of sight very quickly. A few cars fell off at the first corner. Road Atlanta, the first corner, isn't particularly nice. There was a bit of an incident further back involving a county boat and a few other vehicles. Not really sure what happens there. The county squire ended up in the middle of the road as well, and I think it collected a Mercedes. There are a few cars that were broken from that first corner. The 240SX. The pink car, I don't know if he had suffered any damage or not. The county squire had taken a fair bit, so had the Elise. At the front, there was already a breakaway group of 4 of us, 2 Toyota Torinos, a Pontiac GTO, and my Alpha. There was also a black and orange Citroen DS4 that was relatively close as well. As you can see, there was a pretty good battle up here. My Alpha was having a little bit of trouble putting the power down on the second part of that chicane. Don't know why. It's been a long time tuning it, trying to get it right, and couldn't. It just, I don't know. It's not a really powerful car. It's only sort of 200 horsepower. Straight line speed is pretty weak as well, as you will see here. It's just getting ditched by the GTO, and the Torino is faster than it. I don't know why it was having such sort of slidey issues around that second part of the chicane, but it was something I struggled with throughout the evening. The straight line speed wasn't particularly good on the Alpha, but handling was particularly good. On the next lap, the battle at the front was all very, very close. The GTO ended up running a little bit wide on the exit of that corner. I was trying to find a way past, but I just didn't have the straight line speed. Through the corners, my Alpha was very, very good. But as you can see, that GTO is just gone, and up towards the first corner, it's fairly straightforward pass past the Toyota Torino. These two Torinos actually were one of the only cars that there were sort of multiples of. There was a good variation, I have to say. I don't know what happened to the Pontiac on that particular bit. I don't think he missed a gear or something, because we both managed to go past him. I then go the long way around the top of the hill. That is not a good overtaking place. It's incredibly scary. The GTO follows me as well. The top of that hill is not a place you want to be overtaking. It is absolutely terrifying trying to go around the outside there. It's a tricky corner in C-Class cars because it's kind of flat out if you get it right, otherwise you're going to have a big crash. Further back, there was an unusual battle between a Civic and a Camaro. The Civic ended up running into the back of it and spinning himself out. Don't quite know how that one works. Some interesting Forza physics is going on there. At the front, and I was holding the lead just about from the GTO. Through the corners, the Alpha was the stronger, but it was really struggling on the straights as we come around. Final corner, everything went a little bit wrong for me. I took a little bit too much curb and ended up sort of going sideways, and I was in front of the GTO who had nowhere to go, and then I got spun into the wall. And then came the rather tricky bit of trying to rejoin the track. My car had suffered some damage, but it wasn't sort of terminal damage and could keep going, but there was quite a few cars were piling past, so I had to sit and wait before I could rejoin the track. So I lost quite a few places. I think I was down at about 7th or 8th. Slightly further up the road, this was the battle for, at the moment, what was 5th and 6th, I think. I can't remember. There was so much going on, it's always hard to remember who was where at what point in time, between a Mercedes Cosworth and TJ, who is driving the Scion TC there, that confusingly is painted like the British touring cars MGs. This was probably one of the closer battles that was going on at the moment. The field had spread out quite a lot, as it often does in these. The Pontiac GTO had gone off at the front, the two Toyotas were kind of close in second. This was probably the biggest battle that was going on at the moment. Behind this, the field was very spread out with a few damaged cars, with varying degrees of damage, being sort of different speeds and some having to pit. And I think I was stuck behind a Porsche this time. As you can see, the Scion is a pretty quick car actually. This Mercedes as well, very similar to mine in the sense that it was not very fast in a straight line, but it was very fast through the corners. You can see these two were catching up very, very quickly to the Citroen DS4, and it wouldn't take them very long to find a way past that. A lap later, and as we see, they had both got past, and then TJ got it all wrong coming into the first corner. Don't quite know how he managed that one. Looks like he'd locked the back brakes up or something similar, and that, yeah, dropped him down another place. It's a strange incident, that one. Not really sure what caused it. It's rare for cars to go sideways like that. The Mercedes then had a spin on his own accord. Just got a bit too much curb and couldn't quite get it stopped, which is a shame again. Dropped him down a couple of places, and that was pretty much the end of that that battle for him. He then ended up, I think, slightly in front of. There's me in the Porsche, still having a battle in the background. My car had suffered a fair bit of aero damage and steering, which was making it rather problematic to sort of keep under control. A lap later, and as you can see, I was still enthralled with the battle with the Porsche. Eventually, I was to find a way through at the first corner, and it was fairly straightforward. Porsche ran a little bit wide, and it wasn't too hard for me to get through. I was then going to try and set my sights on the Mercedes, but my car had suffered sort of too much damage and it wasn't actually quick enough to keep up. All credit to him, tried to come back at me, but over the top of that hill you're never really going to be able to do much, and then the Alfa has just about enough sort of drivability at the moment to pull away. I don't know if the Porsche had suffered damage or not, because yeah, there was quite a lot going on that first lap. It was very hard to keep track of, very hard to film for as well. Behind me, I think this is in about 8th or 9th place. There's a VW Corrada. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I'm sure somebody will tell me I'm wrong, because I normally am, but never mind. And he was quite a way back from sort of me and the Porsche. Further back than him was the odd sort of mix of cars. Most of them have been suffering damage from the first lap instance, so don't really know what's going on. This is what's going on here. The two Toyotas, these were up into 2nd and 3rd. The Neve Speed one had managed to make the move up into 2nd. There's an Elise in the middle of them. That's a lapped car. It was one of the ones that suffered damage at the first corner or first lap, and he was in the pits, which is why he's in the mix there. But as you can see, it was fairly spread out throughout most of the field in this one. Towards the end of this race, there wasn't a huge amount of action going on. The closest battle was between 4th and 5th. This is TJ in the Scion TC and the Citroen DS4. There was I'm not really sure what happened there. TJ basically came across the track and clipped the back of the Citroen, sent him into the grass, and then he did a roll. And now in a very dangerous place. Oh, that was close. That was me that decided to go behind him. Probably wasn't the cleverest idea I've ever had. Yeah, that incident, I'm not really sure what happened. I'm not sure if TJ deliberately moved over it and sort of hit him, or whether he just didn't know he was there and was moving over to defend and found Citroen there. It's very tricky in Forza, especially if you're running sort of bonnet view, to actually see what's left and right of you, because you have to try and find a button, and it can be quite awkward depending on the controller layout. So yeah, there's a bit of an awkward crash, that one. There's a bit of shame because the Citroen, who was doing pretty well, had fallen quite a long way down the order. The Pontiac GTO had a fairly straightforward race after getting past me on the opening couple of laps. It was pretty much just drove away and took the win. The two Torenos were 2nd. This one here, the Neve Speed one, was the 2nd. Managed to pull out a pretty large sort of margin over the one in 3rd. And you can see in the background there was a smoking Civic that was damaged. I think I ended up in about 5th or 6th. So we go on to race number 2, and yes, there is a Hummer at the front of the grid. Don't ask, I don't know either why, but there was. I had a pretty poor start this time. I got boxed in behind the Citroen and couldn't really go anywhere. I think there are some paints that didn't load in this replay. I can't really say why. There's a smart car that's sort of gone wandering across the grass there, and there's a bit of chaos going up towards the sort of the top of the hill. Amazingly, at this point, there is a Chevy Spark in the lead, which didn't last very long. I don't know if he got nudged or he went off on his own accord and ended up across the grass. There's a Hummer going all over the place, and an Impala fell off the road at some point as well. And again, this time around, there was a group of 4 of us who's kind of broken away at the front again. I was currently battling with a Fiesta that seemed to be struggling a little bit with some cold tyres. It was going sideways all over the place, which is a little bit unusual for a front-wheel drive car. TJ this time was driving the Mark II Escort, which you can see up here, and the Lotus Elise, the one that got stuck in or had a crash, sorry, in the first lap of the first race, was up there in the lead at the moment. Although it wasn't going to last for long, as the Fiesta took a lunge up the inside, and I got overtaken by TJ in a very good move at that final corner. Everything then went wrong for the Escort as it drove into the back of the Elise, and then they had a spin before taking each other out again, and both those cars suffered a lot of damage and had to pit and would fall down the leaderboard, fall down the race order quite a lot, which ended up leaving me in 2nd. Somebody's on the grass there, go around the final corner. There was a big battle. This is sort of mid-pack. I think this is about 4th, or I think it's like 5th to 9th. They're all together here. This is a big angry battle going on here. Wouldn't particularly want to have been part of this one. The Alfa Montreal there is starting to pull away a little bit from these guys. I can't remember what side is that. Dodge Omni, I think, was trying to go around the outside down the hill. Doesn't work, and you can't really overtake down that place. The Escort did a very good job, credit to him, of keeping that thing pointing the right way and not driving into the side of the Chevy Spark, because that could have been a nasty crash. A little further back, the Impala, not quite sure what happened to these guys. They had some sort of incident. The Impala has a smoking engine. At the moment it's showing the Camaro is smoking, but later on in the replay it shows it's not smoking, so I don't really know the levels of damage on these cars. But the Impala was certainly had some level of engine damage, and these were guys still battling. I have to say, credit to the Impala, was still actually putting in some decent-ish times, despite the fact it was being quite heavily damaged. The smart car, which you saw at the start, is on its side and spent the entirety of the race on its side from the first corner, because it was, well, racing simulation damage, you can't roll your car back over, and it wasn't actually in the way of the road, and everybody was having pretty good races. So the poor smart car was stuck in the gravel and it wasn't going anywhere. The downside of having a rather short, tall car is it's very, very easy to roll over. The battle in, I can't even remember what positions it is. It's the Mercedes and the Citroen DS4 were having a bit of a battle. Mercedes was trying to make his way up through the grid. There was some rather large contact there, not the greatest of overtakes, I will be honest. Mercedes ended up going a bit sideways. Again, this is another funny one. I don't really know what happens. I don't know. I don't want to say it was a deliberate crash because I don't think it was. I guess he just didn't see that the Chevy was there on the outside, because again, it's another one that's very hard to see if the car's on your outside. And that pretty much destroyed the Chevy. I don't think that one there was working anymore. I think he just about made his way to the pits, but lost an awful lot of time at the front, and I wasn't really catching the leader. The leader was pretty much gone again. With a mistake into the final kind of chicane bit, I was now under quite a lot of pressure from a fellow Alpha. The Alpha Montreal that had started last on the grid, 16th place, had managed to make his way up to second, and now going to try to go around the outside of me around the final corner. That's a very scary move. That's not a place you really want to be. Now, this was an interesting battle, and a battle that would rage for pretty much 5 or 6 laps. The Montreal was the much faster at a straight line. I would say much faster. I mean, they're still pretty close cars, but the Montreal was noticeably faster at a straight line. However, my 155 was much better through the corners, which would make for a lot of position changing. As you can see here, it's very, very close between these two cars. As you come over the top of the hill, can't really do much. And down this section, you cannot overtake down here unless you get really, really lucky, because it's literally flat out and not particularly wide. Alpha's taken all of the track and a little bit more there to try and find a way past. We come around that corner there is actually another. It's a weird corner. It's a flat out corner that you actually need to downshift in some cars because it's uphill and it's a long corner. It slows you down. I was trying to kind of make it as difficult for the Montreal as possible, because they're going to end up with the inside line for this sort of chicane. I don't really know, what would you call this corner? Chicane, kind of. It's kind of like a large chicane. S-bend, maybe. There's a little bit of lag on the replay there going on. Good old Forza. I have to say, actually, this race was a lot better. There wasn't too much lag going on. There's always a little bit when you have 16 players, but it was pretty good. We get people in the lobbies on the most parts this time, so we could have 16-player lobbies, which makes a change. Further back, the Impala, Torino and Camaro were all still pretty close together. A similar battle actually was emerging between the Torino and the Camaro. Camaro very fast in a straight line, as you would imagine. It was a muscle car after all, going for a sort of an inside line overtake at the first corner, but it just doesn't have the cornering ability. So the Torino can sort of run around the outside and keep the position. I'm probably pronouncing any of these cars wrong, or all of these cars wrong. I apologise if I do, but oh well. Kind of near the front, second place battle going on, and still the two Alphas were battling away. This was probably one of the best battles I've had on Forza for a long time. My 155 goes sideways. Fortunately for me, the Montreal fell off the road as well, so it was pretty much even. Yeah, this is one of the best battles I've had on Forza for a long time. It was very, very close between these two cars. To come around the final corner again, you can see how much more speed that Montreal has than me. Kind of having to go very, very defensive very early, make him go the long way around because his car doesn't handle quite as well as mine. It's very difficult to go around the outside of that first corner. I clipped the curb and it ended up putting me on 2 wheels, which isn't particularly helpful, and I maybe sort of touched the side of the Montreal. We both managed to get away with it. I don't think we had any damage. If we did, it's very minor. We didn't really lose any time. The curbs around here are bigger than you expect. There's a couple of times that I was clipping these, went on 2 wheels, and I think that's what happens in the first race. When I was going around the final corner, I ended up on 2 wheels, and that's what sent me kind of into a spin anyway. Again, another lap and another overtake as we come into the sort of S-bend corner towards the end of the lap. My car was really good on the brakes, I have to say. There's a few times now I was using that spot. It was probably my favourite overtaking spot on this entire track. I could brake very, very late with this Alpha and make up some good overtakes and some good sort of positions. Again, it's too wide through the final corner, not something you want to do. A cone's just gone into orbit. It's incredibly scary going around there. I was sideways as well through that final corner. It's amazing that we didn't end up running into the side of each other. I have to say, I was surprised with the number of overtakes on different corners. I was expecting it to be quite hard to overtake around here. The corner sort of into the chicane S-bendy bit was the main overtaking spot I was expecting. The Montreal was going sideways on its own accord. It wasn't helped by me. It was very, very close there. I may have nudged him at some point, but he was going sideways on his own. I try to go around the outside of the hill bit. You're not going to overtake around there. There's absolutely no chance you're going to get around there without having a collision. And of course, because my 155 has got better sort of cornering, better grip, I could hold a tighter line through there and get sort of a better exit. But of course, we're now onto a straight again, which is problematic. I was having to go very, very defensive for a lot of these laps. And as you can see, the Mercedes Cosworth, there it is, has been catching up to us. We've been battling so much. The Mercedes that was quite a way behind us was starting to catch up to us. And you can see I was struggling. I was really struggling in the second part of that chicane to actually get any power down. Further back, and the Impala, Torino and Camaro were all still very close. they were having a good battle of their own. There wasn't too much position sort of changing, but they were all very, very close. They were actually beginning to catch up to the Citroen DS4, there we go, from earlier. Again, I think he was suffering some damage, but I'm not sure quite how accurate the Forza telemetry is, so I can't really tell how much. But so these four were all pretty close together, and considering the sort of varying, well, the cars are hugely different, and the amount of damage some of them are having, the Impala was still pretty damn quick in a straight line as he tries to make a move on the DS4, but you know, it just hasn't got the handling. You can see the DS4 can again run right around the outside and keep the position. That's pretty much the story of a lot of these races. And why I love racing C-Class cars is because you have to make a choice between performance or sort of speed or handling. At the front, the Fiesta had pretty much just driven off and was a mile quicker than everybody else, and especially considering us two at second were battling. However, a simple mistake on the final corner just clipped the curve a little bit too much, sent them into the barriers, and it's on its side, and there's no recovering from that one, I'm afraid. Which is a shame. I mean, he had a huge lead, you could see. The Escort that just went past, he's a lap down. And there's another car coming, and that's a lap down as well. And there I am in second. Montreal had made a mistake somewhere, fallen a fair bit behind, and there's the Cosworth. He had an absolutely massive lead and was pulling away from, well, we were having such an intense battle in second, he was pulling away from us rather quickly. But a roll on the final corner, you know, never helpful. So as we come towards the end of the final lap, the battle for what was second was now the battle for first. The Montreal made a mistake at some point off camera and had fallen a fair way behind, which was lucky as I locked up into the final chicane and was still having trouble getting any power down. Fortunately for me, the other Alpha also went wide in the second part of that corner, ended up on the gravel or grass or whatever. So it was a fairly interesting race. That was a very enjoyable race for me as I come take the win. The Montreal came in second, and the Mercedes that had been catching us all race just didn't have enough time, just ran out of laps at the end and had to settle for third. Further back, there were still battles going on. We had pulled quite a big lead over the rest of the field. I'm not sure if this is for 4th and 5th or 5th and 6th. It was a very good battle anyway between these two as we come up towards the final corner. The RX, I think it's an RX-7 of some description, had a lunge but couldn't quite get it sort of far enough alongside. Cosworth then, it's a little bit of panel rubbing going on there between these two. They're now going to try going side by side through this final corner. It's not a good idea. It's amazing actually how many of us got away with doing that. If you try to do that in an online lobby, normal online lobby, it would end in disaster. And further back, the Impala had not quite made up the time to the DS4. Meanwhile, the Camaro had somehow got past the Torino. These guys had a pretty good battle considering the amount of damage that a lot of these cars had. And yeah, I think this was for sort of like 9th or 10th. Pretty much there was battles throughout the field, doesn't matter what position it was over, the people were battling everywhere. So we move on to race number 3, and I started alongside my Alpha rival this time. Again, sort of in the middle of the pack. It's quite scary being in the mid. You want to either be at the front or the back, because being in the middle is utterly terrifying, because you never know what's going to happen in this one. Round the first corner, and amazingly, it was all very, very clean. I had a pretty slow start. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what went on through that first corner. I certainly struggled through there and dropped a couple of places. You can see the Alpha has got a couple of places on me. I was battling with a Mercedes Cosworth. Amazingly still, nobody has fallen off the road yet. There hadn't been a big crash. I was very impressed with that. Now, the Impala from Large Race, actually, the one that was broken, was currently in that 3rd position when everything sort of went a little bit wrong. I was in 4th, sorry. DS4 gave him a slight tag, and then you have a massive muscle car going sideways, or muscle car, or whatever the hell you'd call it, and then sort of chaos ensued behind him. I ended up on the grass, you might have seen. Had to kind of end up going the long way around. It was a big mess, that one, as everybody was trying to find somewhere to go without running to the side of everybody. Luckily, I think there was only one car that took major damage from that. There's a Civic smoking, don't know why that one's smoking. The Toyota Torino that ran into kind of in the back of the Impala took a fair bit of damage. Everybody else got away with it fairly unscathed. I'd lost a fair bit of time in kind of going around the outside. The final corner was to claim another victim. This time it was a Mustang. Go straight in the tyre wall. The final corner on this track is probably one of the hardest, I would say, of any track really. It's a very nasty one because it's flat out, or it should be flat out, but if you don't get it quite right, you're going to have a really big crash. I was in 4th at this point, I think. My sort of escape of the spinning Impala put me across the grass, which meant I was quite a way back from the lead 3 who had managed to get away fairly clean. As you can see, the Mercedes Cosworth is making his way through the pack again. Citroen DS4 was doing relatively well. There's a Toyota MR2 in there for good measure. This was probably the closest battle that was going on at the moment. Mercedes has got his way past the DS4, and the MR2 wouldn't take him particularly long, I can't imagine, to get past that either. And there's a Mustang in the background. Watch out for that Mustang, because that is a rather fast car. So as we move on through the race, the battle for second was actually pretty close at this point. A Toyota 2000 GT, I believe I've got that one right, and the good old Alfa Montreal. They've been having a battle for a little while. The Alfa have been catching the Toyota for a while. It wasn't long though before the Toyota locked up slightly into the first corner, ran a little bit wide, and a fairly easy pass. But yeah, you've got to love it when you're when the person you're racing makes a tiny mistake like that, and it's a nice easy pass. That could have been a good battle between those two, because those cars looked fairly evenly matched. The Lotus Elise, that had not had much luck all day, or all evening, sorry, this time had got away with any first lap incidences and was slowly making his way through the field, battling with a VW Corrada. I can never pronounce that car. I'm sure somebody will tell me how it is pronounced. Yeah, the Elise, okay, is not going to be particularly fast in a straight line, which makes overtaking particularly hard. Coming towards the... I need to decide what this corner is. I'm going to call it a chicane, but it's not. It's the same right shape, but never mind. Corrado ends up on the grass, and the Elise makes up a position. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm calling that last corner something it's not. I don't really know what to call it. Anyhow, in the battle for fourth was now becoming like a classic DTM race between the Mercedes Cosworth and my Alfa. These cars were incredibly evenly matched. The Mercedes was a fraction faster on the straights. Not a huge amount, but it was slightly faster. Whereas my car was a little bit better through the corners. Again, there's such tiny margins that these cars are incredibly close. Too wide up the hill, no, that's not a good idea. You're never going to do that one cleanly anyway. So I had to back out and kind of fall in line. This was a very, very enjoyable battle that raged for a couple of laps. As you can see in the background, the Mustang is catching us, which was quite a scary prospect. Me trying to find a way past. Road Atlanta is a hard track to overtake on, because a lot of it is flat out. I reckon over the course of a lap you brake maybe 3 times. You brake at the corner that's coming up now, the end of the straight. You brake for the first corner, but it's not a very big braking zone, and you might brake at the top of the hill. Anyway, I take a big lunge. That was probably my favourite overtaking manoeuvre to try that one. The Alfa did have very good brakes, so I could brake very late and have massive lunges into that final sort of chicaney bit. However, I just can't get the power down on the exit of that corner. As you can see, Mercedes is going to try and go all the way around the outside. Not a good idea through there. Still we get away with it, and still we're side by side through that corner. Again, very scary move. Move that one is. Mustang is now almost right on our tail, because we're slowing each other down while we're battling. And you can see the Mercedes is slightly faster than me in a straight line. I can't quite keep up with it, but through the corners the Alfa does have a bit of an advantage. So that race was very, very close. The Elise was making his way through the field. However, it's another incident on this corner here. I think it's people just not realising what side of them their opponent's on. The Elise ended up being pushed into the wall. I don't want to say people do stuff deliberately on here, because I'm sure nobody did. I think it's just a case of not realising your opponent's on your outside, because the racing line is sort of on the outside as you sort of come into that corner. That would be my best guess as to what's happening anyway. Towards the back, and the Torino that was suffered at the start was struggling with some engine damage. Doesn't help when you get a bit of a shunt from Mustang, and ended up in a wall. Now this would prove pivotal for the race, not particularly for the Torino, well, because he was already down the back. However, me and the Mercedes were still having a battle in another lap, and we're going to go sideways around here again. Not sideways, side by side, sorry, around the final corner again. Now at the front you can see the Torino that had a spin was now trying to get back on the track. Didn't realise that we were coming, and there was a big crash. Mercedes didn't have time to move for him. I was literally under the wing of that Mercedes, couldn't see a thing. So there was a big crash. Mercedes is utterly destroyed in that. It had pretty much no engine. It's now in a really dangerous position. It's not a good place to be that, because you're pretty much on the racing line into the first corner and your car can't move. So luckily he waited and could pull off the road safely. My car had suffered some damage in that. The engine, a little bit of damage. Steering was the main problem. I had very little steering, or more like lots of steering to the left. I just couldn't get it turned on any other direction corners. You can see it, MR2 didn't take long to get past me. The Mustang, incidentally, that was behind us managed to just about avoid any damage from that. I'm not sure, he may have had some bodywork damage, but he got away with any major incidents. At the front though, it was an easy win for the Fiesta, who had pulled away pretty much from the off and was far faster than anybody else. This time didn't roll it on the final corner, and yeah, could take a fairly straightforward win. As you can see, cars were trying to rescue some of the damaged vehicles towards the end of that race. The Alfa Montreal came in second, and the Toyota 2000 GT came in third, both of them having a fairly lonely end of that race. The Ford Mustang came in fourth and managed to avoid the sort of collisions between the two DTM cars. He got away with probably minor bodywork damage, nothing too bad. I had fallen down the order with my damaged Alpha. I ended up at about 6th or 7th. You can see the Celica was catching me. If it had another app, he would have got past me. So yes, there we go. That was it for C-Class Racing. It was an enjoyable evening. There was a lot of good battles, and again, I'm sorry if I missed something. There's so much going on in those races, especially when we had full 16 driver races for I think all of them. Maybe not everybody finished, but I think there were 16 people started on each of them. It's very hard to find everything that was going on in that race because there was a lot of action. There were a few more crashes than I would have liked. There was a few sort of unfortunate incidents. I think something we can learn is you've got to be very, very careful after you have an incident as to how you rejoin the track. It happens, it's inevitable, cars are going to end up broken, and there are bigger problems on some of these tracks than there are on others with cars getting stuck. As you saw with some of the incidents there with cars which just parked on the racing line and couldn't move. It's a problem. There isn't a huge amount we can do about it. You just got to be very, very careful. And yeah, if your car is in a spin, in an accident, and you're trying to rejoin the track, you've got to really pay attention to what's going on and where cars are going to be, especially considering some cars are quite fast and your car could be quite broken and trying to rejoin the track. The cars could appear much quicker than you expect, which I think is what happened in the final race collision, is we just appeared there when he hadn't expected us to be travelling so fast. There's also the odd incident that we were seeing in there with people I just think weren't realising that somebody was alongside them, and as they turned to either defend or to take the race in line, they found somebody and had a bit of a collision. It's unfortunate it happens though, and yeah, it's just one of those things that happens in online racing. With a bit more practice, we'll get there, and we will have hopefully some more clean races. So next week, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to give this a go. Don't know how well it will work, but we're going to do a race or 3 races on Dirt 3. I fancy doing some sort of trophy trucks and other off-roading vehicles. Do something a little bit different. Not quite sure what vehicles we'll use, but it should be interesting. The video will be slightly different format because I don't know if Dirt 3 you can even save multiplayer race replays or not, so it will be live recorded during the race. Hopefully it won't end up with me on my roof at the first corner and there'll be absolutely nothing to talk about, but yeah, we're going to give it a go on Dirt 3, see how it goes. As ever, if you wish to sign up, then there will be a link in the description. Go to our forums, there is a section, FailRace versus the community, go in there and sign up, and then yeah, you can join from there. This week's race will be held on Thursday, I've got to look at the calendar again because I forgot to check what date it would be. Thursday the 27th, there we go. The race will start at 7 PM English time, or the lobby will open at 6:45 English time, and then the first race will hopefully get underway at 7 PM. Dirt 3 is only smaller lobbies, I think it's 8 people on there, so there's going to be slightly smaller races, but still should be good fun. We're going to see how it goes on a slightly different game. It should be fairly chaotic. However, that is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.